Welcome into the show, ladies and gentlemen. We have another NFL free agency specialty show today. And I had to go to a guy who I really respect. And I have to be honest, and I'm going to tell him this to his face. Let's just bring him in to make this happen because I couldn't believe this when I saw it. Ladies and gentlemen, Pat Leonard, New York Daily News, does a phenomenal job. Make sure you guys are following Pat on all social media platforms, including Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. At P Leonard NYD, and also make sure you guys are following on his podcast Talking Ball and his YouTube show as well, PL on NFL. You guys can follow him on YouTube. Make sure you guys hit subscribe right there. Pat, just first and foremost, I got to give you full marks, man. Welcome to the show. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
I saw your story, and I got to admit, I didn't originally see it was your story. It was one of those things that it got picked up. It was like Eagles showing interest in Saquon Barkley. And my reaction was, I swear to goodness, I said this on the show, I said, that's cute. I was like, somebody is trying to pump up the Eagles to make the Giants pay more or the Cowboys pay more or something, because there's no way in hell Howie Roseman is doing this. Then I clicked on the story. I was like, oh, wait, Pat wrote this? I clicked on your story, so I gave the Daily News the click, and I read it, and I went, okay, this still, I don't believe it, that it's legit. Like, it's legit as far as the interest goes. Someone's putting out something. And then Howard Eskin here in Philly said it. Mike Lombardi said it like an hour before. And I was like, I won't believe it until I see Cam Jurgens running 15 yards in front of Saquon Barkley wearing midnight green in the upcoming season. And then sure enough, Adam Schefter drops it that he is, in fact, a Philadelphia Eagle. Kudos to you for getting the story, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, no, it was a situation where I think myself as well, when I was talking to people around the league about, let's narrow this down, right? We all know that people think Saquon's a great player, but who's actually a player, a suitor, and who's going to show that not just interest in him, but also going to view him as the dynamic, versatile, all-around weapon that he believes himself to be. Because, Mark, what that was going to translate into was using him in a different way than the Giants did, which is one thing Saquon wanted, but it also was going to mean that the team was going to offer him the kind of money that was going to get him there, because he would have been signed multi-years with the Giants already if they had shown him a contract that he felt was respectable and had validated the talent he had. And so that's how the Eagles, talking to several sources I trust in the league, ended up in that defined kind of final group, along with the Houston Texans, a team who was in it to the end, Chicago Bears, and some of the other teams that ended up in the running back market going elsewhere, like the Baltimore Ravens going with Derrick Henry. But the Eagles, Howie Roseman, Sirianni, Kellen Moore, their plan for using Saquon translated also into their valuation of him as a player, and ended up leading to my report and then ultimately to their interest and putting the money where their mouth was.
I have to, because I mean, obviously, as a Giants writer, you know the Eagles. As an NFL writer, you know the Eagles rather well. You don't have to be just a Philadelphian to understand how Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie's mind works a lot of the time. When your source, and I'm not asking you an out of source or anything crazy like that, but when they were like, oh yeah, and the Eagles are interested, were you like, oh come on? Wait, was your reaction disbelief, or were you like, oh no, that totally makes sense?
No, it made sense to me for two reasons. One, I know Saquon very well and have covered him for 6 years now. And I know how he thinks and how he thinks of himself and how he has himself on a pedestal, but not in a negative, overconfident, brash, cocky way, in a confident and I can put this team on my back kind of way. And I knew that he wanted to win and go to a team that not only was going to use him and pay him, but also was going to give him a chance to make these plays that we've seen on the highlight reels on the big stage. Like, he thinks that he can be the Christian McCaffrey type, and he just wants somebody who views him the same way. And so when I'm hearing that the Eagles are in on it, now I'll agree with you. Did I think that was definitely going to mean that Howie Roseman was going to pay a running back, right? Given how he finds value at that position, and given how we know that he constructs these rosters, and often, to get the Eagles deep, even to the Super Bowl, winning the Super Bowl, it's not usually part of the plan. But I think knowing Saquon was as much of a key part of it that led me to not necessarily doubt that the Eagles' interest was real.
Okay. All right. So that's it. That is interesting. Now, one of the things I've always heard is that when there is somebody out there that the Eagles have an eye on, they are very aggressive. And this seemed to be pretty much open and shut as far as free agency, tampering, illegal tampering period went. Did you get a sense as the ball started to move after your report that this was going to happen as quickly as it did?
Yes, the Texans were another team though that were very much in it. So it wasn't a slam dunk until it got to the days closing in to the start of the tampering window that it became like, okay, it's going to be Philly, because Houston had high marks for what Saquon could be. And Mark, a lot of this too has to do with how he doesn't necessarily pay running backs usually, but what he does do very well is evaluate talent, and he's not going with the crowd. He and the Eagles staff are making their own determination on a player. And I talked to some key people, decision makers in the league who, like from the outside looking in, people name Saquon's injury history, which is a real thing, right? Tread on the tires, all those kinds of things. But there are people in the league who quietly throughout the early part of this process leading up to his free agency were saying to me, Saquon still as explosive as I've seen him in years past. Like I keep hearing from people that maybe he's lost a step or he's had this ankle sprain, he's had the torn ACL. He's not the player he once was, but I turn on the tape and I see that he's still got it. He's still got the juice. And if we can get him into space, he can use that on a team that the Giants haven't been able to unleash. And so down the stretch, the Eagles ended up being the leading horse in the race, but they weren't the only one. Like the Bears, he took it to the Bears over 30 carries in 2022 in a Giants win. And that was one thing that the Bears saw, the Texans saw firsthand when he beat them head to head in 2022. And the Eagles know very well in division. These were teams that valued him as a guy who was just as explosive now as he was, say, 3-4 years ago. And they emerged to the forefront down the end.
Answers my next question. What are the Eagles getting? What are the Eagles getting in Saquon Barkley? Because there's a lot of questions that, Eagles fans, some of them are still scoring by the last time they gave big money to a running back. It was DeMarco Murray, regardless of the workload he had before the year Chip Kelly really signed him, not Howie Roseman. His workload was insane. He comes to the Eagles, obviously has a horrendous year, and he's gone. But when you look at a guy like Saquon, it's big money for a running back, as you said, that does go against the grain of the National Football League as we have come to know it nowadays. So it seems like you think he certainly has more than enough left in the tank.
Yeah. And, I talked to Barry Sanders about it. Like Saquon talks to Sanders every once in a while about training and how to stay fresh as you're getting older. And he's incorporated some of what the great Barry has told him about, what to do with your body, how to train differently. He trains differently now than he used to. Like, Mark, this guy is so strong that initially when he came into the league, he was so different. You talk to people who trained him for the combine, into the draft, and early on in his Giants career. He doesn't have to get in the weight room and lift all the weights that the other guys do. He still does some of it, but he's so built and such a specimen that really what he has to do more than anything is just work on conditioning and staying fresh. And in recent years, he lost some weight, took some weight off of his body because we know all the Saquads nickname and all that, but he's taking care of himself to be able to be that and sustain that. But also, Mark, what are they getting? The Eagles are getting an uber competitive guy with a huge chip on his shoulder. Like Saquon has a chip on his shoulder no matter what. Like, I walked into the locker room this year. He's bragging about how good he is in chess. I challenge him to a game of chess. He says, let's go. We walk over to one of the couches in the middle of the room. And for 40 minutes, the entire locker room period, I could have been talking to someone else. We're playing a game of chess. He beat me, by the way. He beat me head to head. So he still got me. So I'm coming down to Philly at some point, walking in the locker room with a mini chessboard and challenging him again. But he's a maniac with this kind of stuff. And but that's how he is off the field, on the field. Right now he's been learning golf over the last several years, and he keeps getting better because he doesn't just pick something up to enjoy it. He picks it up to win. And so on the football field with the Eagles, people should understand this about Saquon with this decision. This is very much an indictment of the Giants' current direction and leadership. It's not motivated by vengeance. It's motivated by, it's basically home for him and a lot of the people he grew up with and around. So there is a personal attachment there, Penn State, all that. He got the money. He has the team that intends to unleash him, but he's out for blood. He's out to prove that, here I was in New York, and for 18 months, this new regime comes in and either kind of was subtly, essentially putting a cap and a limit on what he was and what his earning power was. And how did they do that? They took him off the field a lot on third downs. And, part of that is he's not a great pass protector, but he's a good receiver and a weapon. And so the conversation of, is he a running back? Should you pay a running back? Like, the Eagles aren't viewing this as we're giving money to a running back. They're viewing it as we're giving it to a weapon. And you asked me earlier, was I surprised when I first heard the Eagles were in on this? And another point I wanted to mention about that came full circle to me is, and I know you've talked about this in Philadelphia plenty already, Jalen Hurts needs help getting back on track right now. And Barkley is the kind of player who can help him in both phases. He helps him in the run game, right? Whether it's the read option, so you don't know which one's coming. He's a player that when teams play the Giants, who don't have really any other weapons, they have to key on him. In Philadelphia, you can't do that now with Jalen able to run, him able to throw to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. There's too many guys to focus on. And so bringing it full circle, I think the element of people not being able to key on him every play, every down, and then the idea that the Eagles, yes, a lot of heat on Sirianni right now and the staff and how they manage things. But let's be honest, Jalen Hurts, how he leads this team, how he plays, how he runs the offense, that's the thing they need to get back on track. And Saquon knows that, and he believes that they can go back to a Super Bowl, and that's why he's there.
I asked this question in no way, shape, or form for it to be something I'm rooting for, but it's something that has to be addressed because A.J. Brown has been seen on the sidelines having little temper tantrums. I don't label him a diva. A lot of other people do. I think the guy just wants to win, and I think he'll call out anybody who's not giving it their all and he'll hold people accountable. And I think in Philadelphia, New York, Boston, those are cities that really want people to be held accountable. So let's just fast forward to this hopefully scenario that never happens. There's one football for Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, and the guy that is throwing that around or handing it off or putting in the gut of Saquon Barkley in a read option is Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
How do they handle it when they're not the ones that are going to be in the spotlight? How will Saquon Barkley handle it if he's not being hit out of the backfield on short passes in the flat from Jalen Hurts or not getting enough receptions and carries? How will that go?
If they're winning, I think it'll go great. Saquon wants to win above all, I promise you. And frankly, Mark, like if the season starts with Saquon seeing closer to 15 touches a game than 23, like I think that's better for everybody, him, the Eagles, et cetera, because it means they're spreading the ball around, but also it means they're keeping him fresh for down the stretch because he is 27 years old and you're going to want him churning on all cylinders in December and January and hopefully into February if the Eagles are back where they want to be. So I don't think they should be even force feeding a guy like him, or if they're leaning more on the pass one game and throwing to A.J. Brown more. Like I don't think Barkley will mind that at all. In fact, I think getting Barkley more touches in the passing game is a good way to kind of bridge the gap there. Maybe he's not running the ball as much in a certain game. It's a pass heavier approach and game plan for that specific week, let's say against Washington. But you also want to keep Barkley fresh, but keep him involved. So you're lining him up. You're sending him out in motion into the slot. You're hitting him on some choice routes and those types of things. But he's not the focal point of that week, and he's not taking as many hits. And so now he's fresh for your Thursday night game coming up against Dallas. And now you're going run heavy against Dallas, who couldn't stop Green Bay on the ground and doesn't have the defensive line to do it. And now you're pounding the rock with Hurts and Saquon. So, to me, Mark, I think the balance of it will work out. And, listen, you're closer to A.J. Brown in that situation than I am, but I think Brown is more passionate than a distraction. To me,
I like that. He's more passionate than he is dramatic. I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And again, you may know more of this than I do with Hurts, but I think I see it as Hurts's job right now and Sirianni's job, those two, to set everybody on the right course. I think if they set people on the right course of how you're behaving, how you're leading, how you're operating, everyone will follow suit. I think Brown is the kind of guy who just bucks when he sees things that are wrong and no one's fixing them.
Gotcha. No, I think that makes sense. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like Saquon Barkley is a leader, and he certainly can be a leader here in Philadelphia. It's not the team he grew up with, of course, but he's coming in, and I think when you're a leader, regardless of where you are, you're going to lead. One of the things that Jalen Hurts has been criticized for is he's not vocal enough as a leader. He leaves that or defers to A.J. Brown for something like that, or even the coaching staff for some of the other veterans on the team, with Lane Johnson and Brandon Graham still being here in Philadelphia. First off, is Saquon a leader? And what type of leader is he? Follow me, or is he more of a guy that can, address the locker room?
No, so initially he was not a stand-up, address the locker room type of guy. Definitely short and sweet, to the point, we all we got type guy, people follow him. He has his teammates' backs. Everybody knows that. Nobody questions it. One interesting thing that happened this year, I believe it was the Jets game right before the trade deadline. I'm pretty sure so they lost the game, but it was the game where Tyrod Taylor gets hurt. Tommy DeVito comes in. It's pouring rain. Brian Daboll knows, I essentially can't throw the ball for various reasons. And so the Jets know that the Giants are running the ball every play and they can't do anything else. And Barkley basically, not only did he put the team on his back with how he played, but at halftime of the game, he got up and he gave a pretty fiery speech to the guys and to the locker room and said, this is on me. I'm taking us there. Let's go. And he was doing some of that in the middle of the season because the Giants started poorly. I think it was 1-5 and 2-8, I think was the start. And he was getting up in the middle in the locker room and telling the guys, put it on my back. It's on me. He was a captain of the team. And in that game, the coaching staff essentially mismanaged and lost that game. But you want to see a game where a guy puts a team on his back and also does it by example, but also uses his words to motivate the team. That to me was an interesting moment for Barkley because it was him kind of coming into his own in that leadership role. So he will do that. Another thing I wanted to say too, Mark, is I actually think it's really good for Saquon's growth as a player in person to get out of New York, because he was doing a really good job of being diplomatic at managing a lot of his frustrations here while leading the team. But now those shackles are off, right? You saw this Tiki Barber spat with Saquon.
Oh my God.
That was really instructive to, first of all, wasn't it interesting how quickly Saquon shot back at that?
Yeah. Yeah. I do want to ask you about that, but yeah, go ahead.
So that was really instructive. I think Philadelphia fans should know of Saquon's feelings towards how this was coming to an end here and really why it's good for him to be somewhere else, because he didn't like this idea that he could start to feel when it came contract time, and he started to see the people who would always praise him start to say, well, he wasn't worth that much. And Tiki Barber, the reason he had a problem with Tiki is when he first came into the league, there were a couple games in his rookie year, I believe, where he was a pretty big liability as a pass blocker. And it was very real. Tiki was not wrong, but Tiki came out and pointed it out and was very harshly critical of Saquon needing to step up and learn this and essentially stick his nose in there and block. And after that, Tiki, I don't know if somebody from the Giants got to him or if he just decided to switch gears, but Tiki eventually started supporting Saquon and being on his side and always taking his side in arguments. But when it came back around and Saquon chooses the Eagles, Tiki's right there on the radio burying him, saying, "We're dead. You're dead to us," right? And so Saquon kind of lashed back and said, "Yeah, you're a company man. You're loyal to the team. I always knew that. Stay on your side, essentially."
I was wondering if there was something behind it. I figured there had to be something. It wasn't like Saquon got to New York yesterday. He's been there for a while.
Exactly. And so the reason I say it's good for Saquon personally is how do I put this? Sometimes these guys come into the league, especially if you're a number 1, number 2 overall pick and you're in a huge market and you're this star with a big brand. You got everybody around you telling you you're great. And, and then you start to realize that not everybody around you is your friend. And Saquon has come into his own and matured in understanding I have to take control. I have to grab, my career by the collar and take it where I want to go. And so the Eagles are going to get a more mature, different version of him than was in New York. Not only more motivated, but a guy who he's going to be himself now, not, try to be the face of the Giants franchise. Now he can just go to an established winning organization and be himself. And, I think that's going to manifest itself in a lot of positive ways.
One or two more things for you here. The offensive line of the New York Giants obviously has been struggling over the last few seasons, to say the absolute least, right? He's going behind an offensive line that now in Philadelphia is in a little bit of a transition here, going away from a Hall of Fame caliber center, a Hall of Fame center in Jason Kelsey. They're going to be putting in a guy who's never started in the NFL at the center position in Cam Jurgens. They're going to have a different right guard, and three other guys in the offensive line are very well established here. What do you think is the ceiling? His rookie year was incredible, Saquon Barkley. Can he get close to those rookie year numbers running behind this offensive line with, of course, the caveat, if he stays healthy?
I definitely think he can. I think his catches number is the one to watch. Like, all you fantasy PPR fans and, even if you're just an Eagles fan or an NFL fan, I mean, he had 91 catches as a rookie, from Eli Manning there. And I don't know if he's going to reach that number, but, that number is going to rise, I think, higher than you've seen in New York in any year since his 2018 rookie year. One thing to watch for Saquon too, and the reason I think he can get back to those numbers and that level, Mark, one of the things he's struggled with at times as a runner in New York is, receiving the handoff and maybe stutter stepping in the backfield. Part of the reason, though, he was doing that is he started to, now I'm not putting words in his mouth. I'm just saying, watching how he was running. First, he was coming off of an injury, had to get back to himself. But over the years, you mentioned it, the Giants offensive line, there was not enough confidence instilled in Barkley that he was going to take the ball and the hole was going to be there. Too many times he would take the handoff and have to make a guy miss 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And I think, just like you saw with DeAndre Swift last year with the Eagles, find a groove and kind of, get his swagger back. I think you're going to see some plays where Saquon is going to look scary, explosive, just because he's going to take a handoff and the Red Sea is going to part. And if he's in space, he's a killer. Like, he has dropped some passes, right? He's, everybody does. There are times where, he doesn't take it to the house, even if he does burst through the hole. But I'm just saying, this is a player in space. You get him there and he'll take you where you want to go. And the final thing I would say is, I see people joking online about Saquon being disappointed when they get to the 1 yard line and Hurts, does the tush push instead of handing it to him, right?
Yeah.
I think that cracks me up. I could see him, kind of smirking when that happens. But one thing in New York, and you've seen this in these Eagles Giants games too, Daniel Jones, like, he can move the ball sometimes between the 20s. One thing he doesn't do well is put the ball in the end zone. And one thing Saquon has been excellent at, even when he hasn't had big yardage games, when they get in the red zone, he puts it in. And so, it's another finishing piece for the Eagles in the red zone. And obviously they hope for their team.
I'm not going to say it didn't cross my mind of like, hey, Saquon, here's $26 million fully guaranteed. Now here's how you grab Jalen Hurts' ass. Okay, now just follow what we do here. Like, it did cross my mind once or twice. Ladies and gentlemen, this man's name is Pat Leonard. If you're not following it on social media platforms, then what the hell are you doing? Okay, NFL columnist. If Daily News there for the New York Daily News, make sure you follow him there. Make sure you're following him on YouTube as well. PL on NFL. Subscribe to his YouTube channel. Pat, also, and your podcast, it's right up there as well. Talking Ball with Pat Leonard. Just on behalf of Philadelphians everywhere, Pat, I don't know if you're friends with the photographers at the Daily News, New York Daily News. I don't know if you're buddies. I don't know if you're boys. I don't know if you're best friends. I don't know the deal. But this is beautiful. This is one of the most beautiful things. Okay, I have been in Rome. I have seen the Pietà, by Michelangelo. I've looked at the Sistine Chapel ceiling. I don't want to give it a hot take, but this is up there, okay? This is up there. I've seen the David live and in person. This is up there. Gonna fly now. Back page of the Daily News. Or I don't even know. Is this the front page of the Daily News?
That's the back page.
That's the back page. So whatever. Even better. Gonna fly now. That is a thing of beauty. Just applause to them.
I'll pass it along. I had the same reaction. I didn't know when I woke up this morning that was our back page. I saw it pop up online and I thought, oh my God. I almost when I posted on Instagram, I almost called it an unforgettable back page. I deleted the word, but now I'm talking to you and I'm looking at it again. I'm thinking it is, right? That's an iconic back page for so many reasons.
I can't wait for it to not be a Photoshop. Except he'd be wearing an Eagles jersey in this case, not a, you know what I'm saying. Anyway, Pat Leonard, hey, man, great having you on. Great catching up with you. Make sure you guys are following him again on social media, especially on X, on Twitter, at PLeonardNYDN. Make sure you're following him there as well. Pat, thanks so much, brother. Appreciate you.
You got it, Mark. Thanks for having me on, man.
The great Pat Leonard absolutely joining us there on the Rothman Orthopedics guest line. Ladies and gentlemen, Farzi Show will be live once again, 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. We'll give you all the stuff, including Chauncey Gardner-Johnson re-signing with the Philadelphia Eagles on what's being reported as a 3-year, $33 million deal for the Eagles. So we'll get into that tomorrow morning on the Farzi Show, live at 6 a.m. And, of course, we'll replay this interview with Pat Leonard as well. Until then, we'll see you guys in the morning. Be good.